between 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. is that you'll have a lot of sun within the house. Now on the bottom, where underneath the image of a person standing, is that would be where you'd have your thermal mass in order to collect that heat, so that in the second slide on the right on the top is second pick on the right on the top is from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. And as you could see, a lot of heat would be radiating from the floor up into the house, which radiating heat is actually the best way to heat your house if you want to go through the expense of doing it, or if you build a house, I'd recommend doing it right away, immediately. Then between the hours 11 to about 6:30 a.m. when the sun starts, when you have the dark of night and the cold of night also, is that you still have that radiant heat from the floor, but that's when you'd supplement either with gas, wood, whatever you will want to use in order to keep yourself warm and comfortable. And finally, when the sun comes up between 6:30 and 10 a.m., that's really the time that your house is really cold, because the whole night has gone through it, and it takes time to heat up your house, and the sun isn't directly into your house. But if you do have eastern windows, is that you can be able to use the passive effect in order to heat your house during those early morning hours. So that's the cycle that you go through, and then you go right back into your day and you heat your house passively. Now, a passive system is just a system that you can just build into your house. You can build it into your existing house. Start looking at your house now and look how much southern exposure you have. Look first into also how your house is insulated, if it's insulated correctly. And you might have to tear out some walls on the inside and re-insulate, or maybe do something different with your roof or within your attic. But the more insulation you have, the better. The more airtight your house is, as far as everything caulked and sealed up, so that you don't have this leakage and draft within your house where you lose your heat. That's what you don't want to lose. Or you don't lose your cold, that's for sure. So next slide. This is a project I did in Dayton. I gave a workshop about 5 years ago, I think, here, about how to make a pounded tire foundation. This pounded tire foundation, which is tires with sledgehammers that you pound clay into them till they actually expand maybe a quarter, about 25% more than what they are. It's like getting a tire and just filling it full of air all the way that you possibly can before it bursts. We get these tires and we would pound them with clay and level them as we were pounding them. So we always had a level layer. So the first layer, we'd pound them, and each tire, as we moved along, we'd level it all out. And then we put on the second layer, pound those tires and level them all as we went all the way around the perimeter for our foundation. That was our foundation. Now this is I would say, a pounded tire stem wall. If you know what a stem wall is where you get cinder blocks and you make your foundation for your house. Now you have your foundation in order for that cinder block to rest on, but you elevate your house to where you get to the floor, and then that's where the people put all their plumbing underneath and utilities that they want for their home. So this pounded tire on this side, on the right side, that was a completed foundation, and we put our sill plate there, and then we got rebar, which was like 4 or 5 feet long, and we pounded it down through the tires in order to anchor our sill plate. So when all was done, when we finished putting in the rebar to connect the sill plate, you'd run a level across it. It was all completely even. It's nice, even, solid. You know, when you pound a tire, it ends up weighing like 350 pounds. Believe me, I've tried to move one. They're very, very heavy. And I understand this type of pounded tire, which Doesn't have a foundation under it. What it does, it has it's just on the earth, is that they're actually really good in areas where you have earthquakes too. There's a lot of take with it. So those have been proven to be very successful and more reliable when you're hit with something like an earth tremor. And we're getting earth tremors from fracking. So I guess we're going to have to be careful with that. Next slide. Oh, go back one more. If you see the rebar, we didn't cut it off right there, or we did anchor it in certain areas, but we kept the rebar maybe about 8 inches above the surface of the sill plate, because in the next slide, that's where we put our post anchors or anchor. What are those, Greg? Where you stick your posts, those the anchors in the seal plates where you put your posts. Anyway, they're anchor plates, I guess, and that's where you put your post in order to make your post and frame structure. What are we building? We were building a storage shed for the Parks and Recreation of Dayton, Ohio, and this was a permitted and the engineering was approved to be able to build it in a park. So then you see on the right is where we put our post in those anchors for the post, and then we started our framing. And next slide. Okay, that's what we finished off in one day. We pounded all those tires. We protected the tires. We covered the tires with plastic in order that water would run off. It would never go into the foundation of the pounded tire. And then we set up our framing. That's just preliminary framing, all done in one day with probably about 8 individuals. The next day, and this isn't the same photograph because I wasn't able to work on the project the next day. The next photograph is the way we fill between the post and beam construction, the post and beam frame. We'd fill it with straw bale, and where that rebar was up from the sill plate, that's where we'd impale the straw bales, so that they were secured within as a wall. And after that, then you have straw bales that are connected together, but they're a very forgiving type of material to work with. So we would fill it, every single gap that was where straw bales met, we would fill it with cans, bottles, anything that we could put in there. And we like to put cans and bottles because it served as insulation too. And in order just to fill that space, so then the straw bale, what we do is we get a clay slip mixture, a very liquid slip mixture, and we'd put it all over the surface of the straw bale. And then after that dried, and then we basically used trowels to put another different application of an earthen wall, just like plaster, but it was earth. It was earth, sand, I forget what we used, sand, clay, lots of clay in Ohio, and something else. What did we use? Sand, clay. Greg's done a lot of this. A lime, well, that's for the finish coat. Then you can actually make a lime finish coat on it and have a completely green building. So, next slide. So that's the way that worked. Okay, if you really have concerns, first off, concerns about allergies, dust, all that stuff, that a lot of people do have the problem, is that radiant heat is a wonderful way to warm up your house. If you look on the diagram that's on the left, the half portion is when you have forced air, you have different temperatures in all levels of your house. It could be warmer on the top, colder on the bottom, depending where the where the vent is blowing the heat. It could be warm on the floor, cold in the other corner. When you have radiant heat that's in the floor, it comes up from the floor, no forced air, and just completely evenly warms up the house. It's a great way to be able, and very efficient way to heat your home. So, and then you have on the slide on the left is geothermal energy for our home. And that's using the earth, because the earth at certain temperatures, just like an earth ship, that's why they're called earth ships, is that you go a certain depth and you're going to be at a constant temperature of somewhere about 58, 60 degrees. And you use that as a heat transfer and run that through your house. Another way, too, is to utilize radiant energy. It's through your hot water heater. I mean, you're always heating water. Well, actually, that's not true, because a lot of people are now buying hot water heaters that, as the water goes through, as you turn on the hot water, it goes through an element cold and warms up instantly in order to use for your house. Another efficient way of warming up your water, instead of having a tank full of water that you're constantly heating up. Yes, it's on demand, yes. Okay, help me out. So that's a great way to be able to use radiant heat in your house, is to utilize it through your hot water heater, if that's what you'd like to do. I don't like using fossil fuels. Electricity is basically generated through coal, and the industry of coal has changed completely. At one time, I think it was a real, it was a respectable or a reliable form of employment. People had mines, companies had mines, miners worked in those mines. They went home, they had communities, their children went to schools. Schools were built up by the industry, and you know, and then of course their children either stayed and worked in the mines, or they went out and got better work. They got an education, schools. That's the whole purpose of schools. That whole industry has completely changed, because right now coal is becoming scarce, where it's not easy to pull out through a mine, and you're not getting as much coal as you are from as you were before it was depleted by mining. But it's also gotten to a point is that the mining companies they don't care about the communities anymore. You know, what they do is they rip down an entire mountain. And there's examples in West Virginia and places in Kentucky, and even here in Ohio, is that when you rip down a mountain and you have a community of 700 people that are about 2 miles away, is after that mountain is down, that community goes down to 70. I mean, it completely destroys the environment of what people were accustomed to. And if you research that, you'll see that that's a fact. So, see, I got off track there. I don't like using electricity. I don't like using gas. But you know what? It's a reality. If we're going to use it, let's really use it efficiently. You know, and the point is now is that we have photovoltaic systems across the whole country. And these systems are really fit well for individuals. I can't understand why the electric company isn't buying electricity from individuals, because then they wouldn't have to have a coal mine and hauling this coal all over the place in order taking it to plants in order to produce electricity. So, question?
Did the legislature, did I just dream this, or did the legislature pass some kind of a law over the course of the year that says that utilities can't do that buyback kind of thing?
The question is if the legislatures, or at least the state house here in Ohio, passed a law where you can't buy back, where utilities can't buy back electricity from a photovoltaic system in a residential for residential use. That is I believe that is true. I'm not 100% sure on it, but I know that the fossil fuel industry proposes that type of legislation in state houses. And we have a very easy state house to throw that stuff back. The renewable energy standards were just thrown back a week ago. Our governor signed the bill. It was introduced by a legislator in Muskingum County. I do know also is that the Public Utilities Commission had an opportunity to make a deal with a proposal was before them, the Public Utilities Commission, to raise the rate because they were they were trying to stabilize a rate in order to be able to make the largest photovoltaic farm in the U.S., and that was going to be in Zanesville, and they voted it down. It was a real close margin among the Public Utility Commission. But also, something happened this week also, and the governor signed it. It was a bill that came before Kasich to sign that, let's see, what was the bill? Yeah, vote. It was within the budget. It'll come to me. I'll remember it. So, anyway, move on to the next slide. Okay, here's some fun buildings that we made together. I participated in almost all of these. The one on the right is the chicken chalet. That's where they have the best chickens in the whole world. Lay eggs all year too, even in the sub-zero weather. The Dogwood Chalet is another straw bale structure that they made, and they also included a deck with it. The building on the right at the top is the Earth ship that they built, and also the building it's a little bit closer, a little bit better view is the southern side of the Earth ship. Earth ships are hard to see. I'm really serious. They look like a hill. You walk to the back of their property, and all you basically see is a hill because the whole north side of that building is covered with earth, and it's in order to protect them from the north. And it's not until you walk around where you can see that they have a house. And it's really nice. And if you see these houses, they made a design. His name is Michael Reynolds from Taos, New Mexico. He's the one that built the first Earth ship and a bunch of others down there in Taos, New Mexico. But you can see he designed the windows to be slanted. That's not a good idea. The best way to build a house and to place your windows is always to put them upright, because first off, those windows leak. It's sort of like putting in a skylight. Skylights always leak. You just always have a problem with them eventually. So they told me that if they were ever to design it again, or another one, they'd make the windows straight up and down instead of at a slant. And that's their kitchen inside the house. Plenty of plants. The place is just a wonderful house. You know, it's a really funny story is because they use garbage in it. I mean, they go down to the dumpster bins in Philo, because that's where they live. And they'd be pulling out bottles, and all the bars would throw it out, and then cans and everything, always collecting that because we were always stuffing walls. So one time Jay was going to stay with me one night, and I came into the house and he says, "Hey, Jay's coming over here. Let's get the house cleaned up." And my daughter said, "Tim, their house is made of garbage." So it's a nice lifestyle that they have out there because it's a neat house. It's a learning center too. That's what I really enjoy about it. Next slide, Ruben. Thank you. So you can always build an Earth ship, but you'll have to pound 4,500 tires. And that's what they did in order to make that house. And as you can see, that's the preliminary. That is the north side of their house that they built. It took a lot of work. They did a lot of it themselves, but they also had interns that came in that were excited about the project and participated and learned a lot from it, and walked away and used it worldwide. The Pounded Tire Foundation book that they have on their website, they sell it for $5. The people that buy it the most are from India. That book sells like crazy with the people in India that see how to build a house with a tire foundation. Now, I don't know why. Maybe there's a lot of tires around there. Maybe it just seemed like a great idea, but it's a wonderful way to put in a foundation. I hope to someday build a house here in Columbus and get it coated to where you can have a pounded tire foundation for a house here in the city. And this house, which you can't see, but you can always check their website at bluerockstation.com, that's a dragon lair, and had a design where they put on the outside of a dragon, and inside they have an earth floor too, and that's a straw bale earthen building. So it's earthen finish, the whole thing, really nice. And as you can see in the bottom also too, is that they on the foundation where the pounded tire was, is they embedded stone in it, so it's got a real nice little facade as far as on the base. It's not so raw, you know, or even so static. It's a real nicely designed building. Okay, next room. Okay, we're looking at Columbus, and it's really too bad you can't see these pictures really good. But maybe when we get it on YouTube, we'll edit it into where you can actually see the pictures from the PowerPoint. This is a house. This is a house in the bottoms. And what it is, it has a porch where it goes in about maybe 10 or 12 feet on the first level. And then you have your eave up here at the top, and you have your windows at the top, and you got your dormer on top for an attic. And it's facing south. Now, if you're ambitious, you want to renovate a house, those houses are for sale all over the city. You could probably pick them up on a land contract. You might even be able to pick them up for $1 from the city. What you could do with that house is that you could glass in the porch. Right there, you got a solar oven. That could heat the house really nice during the day. At the same time, during your renovation, the windows on top, you could widen them so you get more sun, and put some type of flooring or some type of embankment or something inside of the house. You could build a bench where you have the thermal mass where when the sun hits it, it'll warm up the it'll use the earth area that you have specifically designed for thermal heat, and it would heat the house during the afternoons or the early evenings. And of course, you could always use gas, or you could use electricity in order to heat your house during the night. But the whole point is to use very little of that, because it is convenient. I mean, no, without a doubt, gas and electricity is very convenient, and we'll always be using it. The other house on the top right is a brick house, much nicer house, a little bit more structurally sound. It's a lot different in the neighborhoods. When you go to Old Town East, you have some really nice homes. I think that's why that area has been a target for people wanting to go in and renovate houses. When it comes to the west side of town, where Franklinton is, or even before that at the bottoms, first off, they have a flooding problem, but I think that's all been taken care of with a flood wall. But they are low-quality frame homes. It would take a lot to be able to go in there and basically have to tear everything out within the interior of the house and insulate it. And then there's another house. This one was facing east, so you'd only get east sun. You wouldn't have a chance of getting any southern exposure. So the best bet on that house would be to renovate it, insulate it really well, make it very airtight so that your heat stays within the house. I think that completes the presentation. Is there anything more? But you know, renovating a house has been known to be one of the, I don't know if it's fact, but I've heard about it. It's been known to actually cause divorces. Because it is stressful. You know, when you're tearing out what you're accustomed to using, and you're going through an expense too. But if you have an existing house and you approach that, you have to look at it as this is a learning experience. And you don't learn anything unless you start making a couple of mistakes. Like if you put a molding on the floor and you cut it wrong and it looks terrible and there's no way that you can live with it, well, that's an experience that you really learn from. And you start, you know that you have to go back to the store, get another molding, and put it in there in order to make it the way you want it to be. Those mistakes you learn a lot from, but they become less and less, and you start designing your renovation a lot better. I've been through a lot of renovation. It's not an easy task, but it's completely gratifying when you're finished. So the point is, these are homes, and tearing them down is not a good idea. I think it's best. It would be best if there's any chance of renovating them, is to renovate them, and that would and make it green as you possibly can. Because this home, maybe you renovate it like the one that's facing east and doesn't have any chance of getting any southern exposure. You might be able to put a small photovoltaic system on your roof, and then you might be able to just go in the back and extend the house, and you could use a different type of construction in order to make an addition to the home. So it's something that should be thought about as far as if you're looking for a home. So that's what I have to say about building a house that is green. Greg Pace is going to talk to us about an exciting adventure that's going on in Clintonville right now with photovoltaic cooperatives, something that a friend of ours, Dave Dwyer, started. And I'd appreciate it, Greg. Thank you.
There's a lot of interesting stuff that Tim was talking about. Tim is also a solar installer as well as me. We both took a course down at Blue Rock Station for solar certification, installation certification. So he's a little, he doesn't want to admit that he's a solar installer. But I'm here because, actually I'm here at ComFest today for two things. I have a booth over the other end for a Community Bill of Rights. So if you get a chance to see our booth for a Columbus Community Bill of Rights, we're trying to sign petitions to get this thing on the ballot for people to vote on in the city of Columbus next year. I don't want to talk about it. I could talk about it at the booth over there. But what I would like to talk about, that Tim invited me up here for, is our solar co-op. It's actually, we call it an energy co-op in Clintonville, the Clintonville Energy Co-op. And this is our way to make solar more available and to try and push solar so that we get more, especially in the Clintonville area, but we want to spread it out. Tim was talking about the legislation that's gone on over the last few months that Governor Kasich just signed last week that basically took renewables and energy efficiency and pretty much destroyed incentive for people to put millions of dollars of projects into energy efficiency and renewables like solar and wind in Ohio, because they need legislation they could trust over a 10 to a 20-year period to invest, 10 or 20 million dollars into a project, and that's now gone. That's gone for at least the next 4 or 5 years or so, anyways, which is kind of sad. But this solar co-op, I like both of those words. I like the word cooperative and I like the word solar, and this puts them together. We are a group of people in Clintonville. There's about, I'd say there's about 35 to 40 of us that are serious about this, and we have 8 pilot projects of putting solar on people's homes that we started out with. They've already been designed. We installed our first one back in March, and yeah. The second one's coming up soon. They're still not sure, that they're changing their design, so they're not quite sure exactly how they want to do it. They were going to have batteries in it, storage with batteries, and now they're taking the batteries out. And so we have to finalize their design. But we've got 8 of these projects ready to get put on these houses. And it's really cool because usually when you do a solar project, the part that takes the longest is the permitting, the design and the permitting. And you just got to go through the steps of getting all the permitting depending on what locality you're in. And but once we got all that all set up, we took a weekend to install these arrays, and they had a 6.6 kilowatt system, which was 24 solar panels on 2 arrays in a field about 240 feet behind their house because they had trees around their house. They had this big wide open field that was perfect to put a solar array on. So we took a 3-day period for everybody scheduled out of their time, a long weekend, to come out and set up this array to install it. It took us 2 days. We came out, we actually had somebody, I helped them, we had 2 or 3 of us out there on Friday to drill the holes and put concrete these poles in for the arrays themselves into the ground. And that was 1 day, and then we figured it was going to take us 2 days to install the racking in these 24 panels. We did it all in 1 day. We were done. We had over 30 people that came out, and nobody had ever done a solar installation before. Almost nobody. A couple did, of course, but and we just brought it together. It was so cool. Just did it all in 1 day, and then we had an electrician do the hookup because it was quite a sophisticated system, which is another interesting thing about this. It wasn't just a simple system of taking solar panels and connecting them to the grid with net metering. This was with a charge controller to 12 batteries and inverters. You had to have DC going to inverters into the house because you had batteries. And so you had all these things going on, but not only that, it was a sophisticated state-of-the-art system that had a charge controller and inverters that actually do what they call peak shaving, so that you could actually program this thing so you can use the batteries at the time of the day when power is most expensive, at the peak hours. So instead of taking all your electricity off the grid into the house when it's most expensive, you can use your battery to supplement that and make it cheaper. So it's a really cool system. So this isn't just a simple fly-by-night, popular mechanic system. This is a completely sophisticated, system that commercial installers install. That we did. We're pretty proud of it. There are a lot of different type of solar co-ops or energy co-ops going on. There's big co-ops. Right now there's one called Amicus. It's kind of around the country. I think it's mainly in California, but they have over 23 businesses. This is a business model. 23 businesses that own this co-op. It's fully owned and cooperative through these businesses. And of course, this is how they make solar cheaper for the people that want solar on their homes. But there's other types of, one in Washington, D.C., let's see what it's called here, called Mount Pleasant. They have over 100 homes in this one co-op. They've already installed solar on 100 homes at a very discount rate. But what we did in Clintonville, and what we do in Clintonville, is we have a time bank. And so we do the installations ourselves. And so we try not to contract any of the labor out if we can. And so we try and save on the labor costs. And what we did on this first project, which again, as I said, it was a sophisticated project, they had it, an estimate by a commercial installer at about $39,000 for this 6.6 kilowatt system. And we did it for about 70% of that. We saved them about 30% on the cost of it by doing it ourselves. So it was a huge savings on this. And we figure through what we call levelized costing. When you figure out how much renewable energy is going to cost, you have to figure it out because all the money is up front when you have to buy all the equipment and install it. Then from then on, it's pretty much free, except for a little bit of maintenance here and there. 1 minute. And so, I lost my train of thought. But at any rate, that's what we're doing up at Clintonville. We call it an energy co-op because we want to do energy work and other types of energy work as well as solar. We want to do energy efficiency work. And we do have a website. It's www.cec, that's for Clintonville Energy Cooperative, cec-freedom.org, cec-freedom.org. And we have a contact